we can get started. All right. So welcome back to the Community M Room. This time around, what we wanted to do is a couple of things. First, of course, welcome everyone back to the space and let you know that we will be continuing these conversations throughout the semester. Our office has been hard at work in many different capacities, and you can certainly take a look at some of the past M Room conversations on our newly revised website, which it looks phenomenal. So please check it out. And join in on the ones that we have planned for the rest of the semester. So today we're going to jump in and talk about labels. And the conversation is really, as we come into the space, always an opportunity for us to be in dialogue and conversation. We are not looking to do a lecture or any type of just content drop. We're here to discuss and to be in community with each other. So please jump in into the conversation. We will have some discussion questions and just helping to unpack it as a community. So I am joined by Chad Williams, our director, and Renee is on the call as well, who's our coordinator. I believe Chris will be joining us as well, who is our GA. And like I said, this is a conversation for our community overall. So please jump in. But this conversation in particular, I think is an important one. Oftentimes we think about labels and, whether they are positive or negative, they dictate who we say we are or what people think we are or who we are. And so it's important for us to have this conversation and see where we fall. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that, Chad, in regards to why we're even having a conversation about labels.
It was interesting when we thought about it, right? Because I struggle. I don't know about the rest of you folks, but I struggle with language and I struggle with labels. And so I'm always thinking about the labels that folks assign. And it's so interesting to me because when you live in the skin that I live in, there are some recurring themes on labels that folks assign to you. And I'm always sort of critically analyzing what are the labels that folks are giving me and do I accept or reject that? And then what are the labels that I assign to myself?
Absolutely.
And how do they collide? Because sometimes they do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I really like how you put that into context, Chad. It is such a big deal, especially we don't really think about it as much, but sometimes we do. And those labels really do inform or dictate who we are, right? And sometimes we believe those labels and start really living through them. And, oftentimes they really have no merit, or maybe they are completely interpreted differently, right? From either the person who's giving us those labels or from ourselves, and we're interpreting it in a different way. So how dangerous is that when we start thinking that those are what define who we are?
I laugh, right, when you talk about interpretation, because oftentimes folks label me as passionate, right? And I used to appreciate that because I am a passionate person, depending on, especially if it's something I like. But then I've learned through the years that there's also a side dish, right? And that folks are sometimes putting that passion label is like code language for, like, I don't know, resistor or non-rule follower, which, could also are labels that I'm okay with. But so it's just interesting sometimes when people are assigning labels, and that interpretation is incredible.
I am so glad you brought that up, because that label in particular is one that I've had to grapple with so much. At first, just like you, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I am passionate, and I do put my all into whatever it is that they're talking about. But then it's kind of like a side kind of.
Yeah, it is.
a jolt, almost like maybe you're what is too passionate, right? So that interpretation is certainly something that we live with, right? We start taking on whether it's that label of passionate or others that are put upon us, and we start really trying to figure out what that means in our brains, and we're wasting so much time trying to figure out that interpretation, or if it's a positive or a negative, or what does it actually mean. So this conversation is one of those opportunities for us to talk about what are labels and how do they affect us. So we wanted to start off with a short video. There's not much talking that is happening, so it's a very visual visualization of this concept of labeling, and then we'll come back and talk to you all about what that means and what it means to you, and maybe even think about some labels that you already have heard folks put on yourselves, or that you put on yourselves as well. So I'm going to play that video, and then we can come back and talk a little bit more about it. Now, let's just make sure I have computer sound here. All right. Okay, let's just to get us started. What are some thoughts and reactions to what Chad and I have shared and what we just witnessed in the video?
So this is the part where you unmute yourselves and jump in.
So I'll go ahead and offer a comment. Thank you so much for hosting our meeting. So I'm Ron McLean, and I'm with the Counseling Psychology program. And, I'm working with school counselor trainees, trying to help them to be compassionate leaders in our school systems, working with our youth. And just in watching that video, I mean, we have all sorts of theories and whatnot that we're trying to teach. We have all kinds of frameworks that we're trying to model, but in a way, it's just really, really simple. I mean, watching this video is just so powerful and triggers emotion as I'm watching it. And the bottom line is that when you see someone as valuable, that's restorative, it's transformational, it's also motivating. And if nothing else, I think wherever we are positioned in our helping as a professional, this has got to be a part of the process. The ability to show and demonstrate and live love. Although we don't necessarily talk about it in those terms in academic circles. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Ryan. If I can for a minute, see, you brought up a couple of things, but one is how when we truly are willing to see other folks, right, and build, genuine, authentic relationships, that can be renewing. It can be reigniting. It can be transformative. Can you talk a little bit about, and maybe, in your context working with school counselors, but can you talk a little bit about, like, what is it that causes us not to take that step? Like, what are some of the barriers that hinders us from being able to engage with folks as they are, as opposed to, our brains work in such a way where we see someone and we automatically just start going to the label so we can start making sense, right, of what we're seeing and what it means. That's kind of how our brains work. So we have to actively sort of rewire our brains to say, okay, stop doing that. And I need you, brain, to stop that and to engage. Can you talk a little bit about the barriers that prevent us from doing that kind of work?
Yeah, I would just try to be brief because I could go on all day about this. But I think it starts really at the point of birth and the early socialization, and moving from there, that we're just given so many messages around, how our worldview gets developed. And it starts before we even have a memory, I believe. So we can't really pinpoint when we first started to be socialized because our memory wasn't adequately working for us at this origin. And then we moved through our developmental stages, and all of the major institutions in our culture are programmed in a way to create a certain worldview. And these worldviews often do not serve people who have a minority identity. These institutions are serving other purposes, at least historically. And it takes a lot of energy to come out from under that early training, that early socialization. And I think this is where it begins, Chad. So I'll give someone else an opportunity to chime in. I'll stop there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. There is so much there that you just mentioned too that is important to take into account, right? We are socialized, and we are socialized with a regard on somebody else's worldview who is somewhat imposed on us, and then we start building our own worldview. And with that comes this kind of innate ability to just start doing that labeling, right? That trying to make sense of who it is that we're interacting with, and do they fit in with my worldview? Do they fit in with my values and my beliefs? And it's that connection that we're striving for. And so those labels help us kind of get through that interpretation of who it is that we're interacting with. Any other thoughts from anyone else?
Can I mention a couple of things that I noticed? I was interested in the video in how a number of the labels were like assumed personality or assumed skills. But the one, that helped him was love, an emotional one that had nothing to do with a personality or a skill or a talent or anything like that. Another thing is, I've gone to a number of conferences and people always say, okay, go around the room and introduce yourself. And then we're labeled with basically a position, a tenure, and things like that. So I had set up a couple years ago, keep thinking I'm going to do it sometime and have it in a conference and say, I'm just an ever-changing human being. Because who I am is relative to who I am with. Because, if I'm with my family, I am viewed differently and I act differently. If I'm in a professional environment, so the labels of who and what I am can change. So I'm ever changing, and I am trying not to limit myself with constricting labels and those related expectations that other people have of what those labels are. But it's a hard process to deal with and try to understand ourselves, let alone other people's expectations and definitions of labels. And I guess I wanted to add one more thing. I find it interesting that some labels are allowed by some people and not by others. Like I could call my sister certain names, but don't dare anybody else outside my family call my sister that name.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that's a difficult understanding for people too, is knowing what, how a label is acceptable or not acceptable, or so I was really interested in today's session, and that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you for that, Diane. Thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting. I love your concept of ever-changing human. I really think that that's a way for us to kind of see each individual for themselves as individuals. I wish we could be there. But the reality is that for some of us, we can't hide behind that because our labels are just right up front. The color of our skin, our race, our ethnicity, our language, so much of what we are is so up in front that even changing our label to something that is as lovely as ever-changing human doesn't take away from the fact that you're still seeing certain parts of who I am. And then some folks are automatically putting labels to those identities.
I think I saw my friend Mel unmute herself at some point.
Hi, Chad. Thank you. Ron, you had mentioned institutions, and the frame, before we even say our first word, maybe it's just ingrained in us. And I was talking with Chad the other day about, faith institutions and, original sin and the heaviness of that on children before they're even, what the heck is that all about? We carry that weight before anything else. So judgment, I'm thinking of judgment with these labels, like somehow or other, is it because, and I was raised in a very heavily Catholic upbringing, you're born into original sin and you've been judged already. So does that then give you the power to judge others? Because, oh my gosh, I've been judged, I'm going to judge other people, just thinking of that with what's going on here today.
Mhm.
Mel, I think you are so correct when we think about a lot of times we are reproducing the actions that folks have done to us, right? And it's almost a default, and it's sort of sad.
Mhm.
So folks, we do want to get you a little more engaged in this and want to have a brief activity that we're going to ask all of you to participate if you feel comfortable. And we're going to do 2 rounds of this, right? And so if you scroll over your box, your little Zoom box with your mouse, you'll see 3 little dots that will pop up. If you click that dot, you'll see a bunch of options. One of those options is to rename. And we're going to ask you in this round to rename yourself, and rename yourself using a label that you feel provides you that freedom that we saw in that video, right? When he got that loved label, all the other labels sort of fell off. And it was like he was a new person. What is that loved label for you? What is that label that you feel provides you that transformation, that freedom, the label you wish others would see or utilize when they engage with you? So we're going to ask you to rename yourselves using that label. Carol, you said, let's see.
I'm sorry, where is that box that you are talking about?
So when you, at least for me, when you scroll over your box, right, your individual Zoom box, you should see unmute or mute.
Yes, yes.
Then you should see 3 dots.
Yes.
If you
There we
click
go.
those 3 dots, the last option should say rename.
Thank you.
And then you'll see your name, and we're asking you to replace your name with a label.
And this is,
I've seen it before and I'm not seeing it in this format.
Are you not saying that?
are you on a computer or on your phone or?
Computer.
Okay, you should be able to scroll on your little box with your name, and you don't see the 3 dots?
No, we see the 3 dots, but we don't see the rename feature.
Hmm.
And I've
You
seen it
don't have the
before, so I
rename
know where I'm supposed to be looking for it.
You
Yeah,
might
I don't have the rename feature either.
Yeah, I believe it's in the meeting settings for each individual meeting, you can give participants the option to rename.
Maybe
We don't seem to have it.
didn't
Oh,
allow that.
I didn't realize that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, you should have it now. All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Evan.
And then when you do that, if you want, you can just turn your video off and we'll just be able to see the label that you've placed on yourself.
I got caught up in the technical details and missed the instruction. It was just choose a label.
Choose a label that you feel is freeing, is transformative. Very similar to the video we saw earlier where he got the loved label and all the other labels sort of fell off, and that was the label for him. You want to choose a label that's empowering, a label that you would like others to see about you or wish that they would see when they engage with you.
And if for some reason you can't rename yourself, then you can also include it in the chat. Okay, and so when you have your label or what you have written, go ahead and take the video off and we'll be able to see the word. So you see similar to mine where you just see the word. Okay, there are some popping up already. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. And some are included in the chat as well.
So we're going to ask folks to share some of these labels that you find empowering, that you find transformative, the labels that you wish others would utilize or see when they engage with you. Feel free to share. I see a couple of understanding. Any of you want to start? So folks, this will not work if y'all don't unmute and jump in. This is a conversation, this is a conversation, not a lecture today.
This is Carol. I wrote BU. It's a hip hop line I love, is when people just say, "You do you and I'll be me." You know, just that when I feel like people give me permission to just be myself without necessarily words on it or explain or whatever, and just that room to just be, and show appreciation and room for that kind of diversity, then I appreciate that.
That's powerful. Yes. Do you, be you. Absolutely. Okay, I see a couple labels that I was actually going to utilize myself, but decided to go with some others. I see a resilient out there. Anybody want to jump in on that?
That's me, Chad. It's Tara. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hi. I chose that label just based on life experience. Like, I've certainly been through a lot, which I won't go into detail about. And I think found a lot of power in that word to get past it. When someone else pointed out to me, "Oh my gosh, you've been through these things, you're resilient." I'm like, okay, yeah, I like that. So that's one that helps some of the other less pleasant labels fall away for me.
Love that.
There are a few compassionates. I see one in the chat. I see some out there. Anybody want to? Any other compassionates want voice?
I mean, I wrote a compassionate, and I think it's, for me, you know, I have compassion towards others, and I'd like to see that kind of be something that not only people see about me, but also are compassionate towards me, because, you know, we're not perfect humans. And so, you know, there are times where I'm going to make mistakes, and having that compassion for others or for myself really helps me get through those difficult moments, especially.
Thank you. Introspective. That's interesting. Okay, so understandings. I'm coming back to y'all because I'm interested.
Yes.
Any of y'all want to unmute? Anybody understanding would like to unmute and explain that label for you?
So I'll jump in and I'll
Thank you.
I think, you know, a lot of times we're all kind of quick to judge, and you never know someone's going through in a moment, in that particular moment that you're making the judgment. So to dig deeper, to, even if you don't really know what's going on, to understand that something might be, to say act in a certain way, or to even just look at them and look at what they're doing and react to it. So I think understanding that we're all is really important.
Yes, thank you for that. Maybe one or two others. Anybody else?
I chose patient for myself. I think, you know, reflecting on the video too, I feel like patient is one of those stickers that I would put on myself. I noticed that everybody was giving stickers to the main character, and then he would take them and put them on, right? And that spoke to me a little bit too, that, you know, why did he just take them and put them on? Like, why not hand it back or leave it on the table? But so I was thinking about that, but for me, I feel like there are stickers that maybe I put on top of that one, on top of patient, and that just kind of confuse things. But I do think, like, I feel like that's one I would put on myself, not necessarily that Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I feel like that's one I would choose for myself.
Love that.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
what a great point, right? Like, I think it takes skill and some confidence that you have to build up, because we just sort of assume these labels that folks give us and we assign them to ourselves. And it takes a level of skill and understanding and confidence that you build up that says, okay, no, I don't want that label.
Mhm.
Keep that label.
Mhm. Okay.
Can I comment on my heard and hearing? Because I had thought initially about understanding, but I recognize I'm lacking sometimes in the experience and just exposure to be able to completely understand. So at a minimum, I'm hoping to allow people to be heard. And be able to express themselves and open enough and not, have to be able to be heard myself and to be able to hear others, even if I can't necessarily understand or completely get it. I still want them to, be heard as well. If that So that's why I put heard and hearing instead of understanding, because I know that I'm lacking in some things,
Mm,
able to understand people's experiences.
mm. That's powerful. Especially if we can really hear others, right?
Absolutely.
Someone's tenacious. Who's tenacious?
That'd be me.
Okay. Explain tenacious.
It's never giving up, and it's not easily pulled out of existence, not easily set aside.
Mm,
Love that.
how powerful is that?
That is wonderful. Love that.
And finally, would love to hear from a caring. A caring.
I'll talk about that. So, as a police officer, I'm very conscious of the fact that the label that I carry as an officer often prevents many people from, even considering who I am beneath that label. And when I can engage with anyone, certainly within our community, and get a label that they could see that I truly care about them and our community, I wear that with a significant amount of pride.
Love that.
And how powerful is that if we can get to that point where we understand that police officers can be caring. Okay, folks, we appreciate that. That was round one. Okay. So we're gonna come back, and before I get to round two, I'm gonna share a little story to help us set up round two, right? Because one of the labels that I often get assigned, that sometimes earlier on, I think I accepted. Now I send that label right on back to folks. Is intimidating. And I'm often assigned that label. I can't tell you how often folks have even never engaged with me personally and said, hey, I'm reaching out to you, but I was a little bit concerned of reaching out to you because you're very intimidating. I'm like, you haven't even met me. But I do understand that part of that intimidation comes with how I show up in a room. I take up a lot of space. I'm a 6'1", 285-pound Black male with feet of hair, right? And so I know that for some folks, that is quite intimidating. But I always send that label back, because when you get to actually know me, I don't consider myself an intimidating person. So I always send that label back, but it amazes me because it's a label that will not shake itself no matter where I go. It always follows. So this round, I'm asking you folks to share one of those labels you want to send back. What are one of those labels that folks assign to you that you either have or often send right on back to folks, or you feel like you would like to eventually.
And Katie, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
Oh, I was gonna kind of respond to what Chad was saying a while ago.
Yeah, so,
okay, so we'll call you first, but you gotta rename yourself, Katie.
So yeah, so what we're doing is we're renaming ourselves in the box, and then you can turn off your camera so that label comes up, and then we'll call on you for you to explain yours. Okay. Thank you.
And again, folks, these are the labels that you want to send back to folks. The labels you refuse to accept. All right, and as folks think about those labels and name themselves, let's get started. Loud, talk to us.
Yeah, so I guess similar to what you mentioned, Chad, in terms of taking up space, I've always been considered loud since I was growing up. And I remember even when I was getting married, my maid of honor said, hey, there's three things: she's loud, loud, and loud. And, you know, you laugh it off and so on. And I don't think I've ever been, I've ever felt self-conscious about it. And it's actually something that I'm very proud of. And I think even though I'm very intentional about being loud, because I show up as my very authentic self wherever I am. If I am somewhere and I'm having a good time, you're gonna know. If I'm on the bus and I'm listening to music, I'm gonna move. If I'm on the road and the music is getting to me, I'm gonna be moving and shaking, and I don't care because I'm enjoying myself, I'm happy, and I demonstrate that in a very physical and obvious way. And yes, I'm loud, and my son knows it, my husband knows it. So it's something that I embrace as who I am. And I even this year, because this year I'm going out with a bang, I have it in my planner. It says, be loud. So I've embraced that and shoved that back a million times over.
Oh my God, I love that. Do we lose her?
I think we're still here. Are you there, Chad? I think we may have lost Chad, but absolutely, that is, it's so amazing to be able to come into your own and be your authentic self with no, you know, remorse. Like you are who you are, right?
And I love the true hip hop in that, as I would say, the ability to put the remix on the label. Love it, love it. Who else would like to share those labels you want to send back to folks, or remix? Of course, I can't help but stare at Week. Would Week like to articulate themselves?
That's me. That's Susan. I find that the older I get, the more willing I am to fight off labels like that. And you get to the point, I think, you know, they say with age comes wisdom, but I think that I find as I get older, I care less about the labels that other people give to me, and I care more about the labels that I give myself. You know, Week, you know, being a woman, you know, I'm in my late 50s, and, you know, coming up through really on the edge of, you know, when women were entering the workforce and having full-time careers. Women of my generation have that, but like you know, my mother was a stay-at-home mother, and you know, there's just my first career was in banking, which was predominantly male back then, and it was the women were seen as lesser and not able to you know, have the same career path or achieve as much, or so that's, I don't really feel that label in the job I'm in now, or at Lehigh even, but just coming up, other careers I've had, or even within my family. I'm the middle child of 5. And so I'm the peacemaker of the family, which sometimes can be seen as weakness as well. So, you know, there's times you got to stand your ground.
Amen to that. Thank you. Anybody else wanna? I see something interesting. There are a couple emotionals out there.
Chad, I'll contribute. The thin line between being perceived as a bitch and attempting to be confident in a professional setting, and trying to overcome the gendered expectations we've all been raised with, to your earlier point about that socialization. I think if everybody knew how loving I am and how much I care about them as people, and I want to come across as confident at the same time. I don't know why it can't be both.
That is so true, and there's so much to that too. Mine is overwhelmed, and I wanted to comment real quickly on that, because sometimes these labels are things that people just assume on us, right? And so as we've been talking about this, and for me, I used overwhelmed because I have a lot on my plate. I chose to have a lot on my plate. Right? I am a full-time professional, a mother, I'm in a doctoral program, and so many other things. And it may look overwhelming to someone who's looking at my life, but I chose to be this way. I chose to put these things on my plate, and I love it. And so I'm pushing that back. There may be days where I am overwhelmed, and that's totally fine, because I'll wake up the next day and be just as happy to have all of these things that I chose to put on that plate and become overwhelmed. It's a good thing for me. So pushing that one back. And those do kind of play into these gendered roles, right? Why do you have to do so much? Why can't you just concentrate on one thing? Why can't you just concentrate on your kids? Well, you know what? I'm also a role model to them, and they see how hard I work, and they want to do the same. So for me, it's a label that I'm pushing back on.
I love that. And I see a couple of things in the chat around that, and it's so true, right? Like, men, how many times have we been in spaces where men will speak up and be loud and and it be welcome, and there's
I think we lost chat again.
It's not useful. Oh, I'm sorry.
We lost you for just a second.
But men speak, and it's not helpful, it's not useful, but we accept it. And everybody's sort of squirming in their seat because they know that it absolutely means nothing. It is not useful, but nobody. And as soon as a woman has that opportunity to do the same thing, and then we get all these negative descriptors. And so I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have emotional.
Thank you, emotional.
Yeah, I'm emotional. But I think I'm emotional because I'm very perceptive, and I feel what other people are feeling. Like if somebody is treated badly, like it kills me. Like I just don't want to see that. Like, or if I'm treated like disrespectfully or belittled, or and you're in a work environment and you're like, why is somebody treating me like that? Like I would never treat somebody like that. So I might be perceived as emotional because I'm just like, why is that happening? Or why is this happening to somebody else? Like I've always treated, taught my daughters, like to treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think it's really important for everybody to, to also, to take that path. And I feel like I'm emotional because I wear my heart on my sleeve and I feel for other people. Does that make sense?
Makes complete sense. Makes absolutely complete sense. I saw a pussy. Did I see a pussy? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's me. I guess as a lifelong, I've
before I came back to Lehigh, I was in sales, corporate sales, and I'm in development. So it sort of goes with the territory, but I also think I might get the label internally, because I quite often don't accept the status quo. And I'm quote unquote pushing for change, and I'm not afraid to speak up. So it kind of just goes with the nature. So a negative way to describe that is pushy. So that's a label I'd like to push back, but instead I'd like to be considered someone who's an agent of change.
Amen to that. Okay, so I see an extra out there, right? And I'm gonna let this brother speak, but I'm interested why you pushing that back, bro.
See, because my kids call me extra. But I mean, it'll tie back to emotional. So I get called extra a lot. It's like, why you got to be so extra? Why you got to be this way? And I push that back because what it is genuine in terms of if I feel joy, if I'm in the middle of Costco and I'm having a good Saturday and I've got Stevie Wonder on my playlist in my earphones, I'm going to dance in the Costco. If I am on the treadmill at the YMCA and I've got a boogie with a hoodie going on in my ears, I'm going to start rapping. I'm going to start singing because it motivates me and that gets to my core. And that's who I have to be successful. I can't be half of who I am. I can't be 2/3 or 3/4 of who I am. I can't leave those parts of me to the side and be effective. I mean, I could be a shell of myself, but I can't be. So, I'm going to push back on extra, but also I'm going to accept it because that's who I am. I'm going to be extra loving. I'm going to be extra giving. I'm going to be extra, prayerful. I'm going to be extra and I'm going to live this life to the fullest and kind of expletive to whoever doesn't like it.
I love it.
And an extra with that.
Love it. So thank you all for participating in that activity. As you can see, there's so many different labels that we put upon ourselves, whether they are ones that we are rejecting or ones that we are taking in and embracing. What we're going to do next is we're going to show a short video and we'll come back and talk a little bit more. But this is why labels even matter, right? Why are we using them? So let's watch this real quick and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it.
What does an American look like?
Us.
Yeah.
I feel like it's human nature just to group people up. Obviously we're different because we have different skin tones or different body sizes, but I feel like it's human nature just to basically, do that.
If you say we don't have a label and you say we are united, we're just America, then it's easy to say we don't have these problems because overall, we're a proud nation.
Having these labels is what's bringing the conversation to the table. Like, I could be in the same room as someone who is racist against Arabs, but if we never talked about it, I'm sure we'd get along great, but we'd never get rid of those issues. And as soon as that label is put on the table, I mean, like, who knows what will happen.
So I just did, because I'm in school right now, right? And so I'm in my 4th year of this school. And so there was an exercise of which the teacher, she had us, like, I would take your hand and they would say, what color is he? So I don't identify you as Asian or whatever, right? I just see what your color is. And I had a hard time letting go of the fact that I'm Black, right? So if you were to take my hand, what color do you see? But I identify myself as Black, right? So it's something about holding on to the identity for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but it's like this, I don't want to let it go because obviously it gives me something.
It's worthy of celebration to say, yes, we are all human beings, but we're all different too. So my husband is Black. If I didn't see his color, I would be completely erasing his experience as a Black man in America. He has a different experience because of people's perceptions of his color.
You should see color. It's how you see color that's the problem. It's how you stereotype the labels that's the issue.
Until you've been followed in a store, until you've been body shamed, until you've been pulled over randomly at an airport, until you've been asked, so where are you from? Like, where are you really from?
It's a scary conversation to have. And the minute we start labeling these things is the minute we can have the conversation. And if I don't label it, then I don't need to have the conversation.
You know, I would like to get to a point in my lifetime, or maybe my nephew's lifetime, where we can look at everybody and go, awesome, you're Arab, cool, you're Black, awesome, you're a woman and you're white, you're Asian, sweet, we're all one.
Right.
But until we get there, I'm proud to wear my label of being, you know, a Chicana, a Latina.
Like the word diversity to me should be changed to complexity.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
We're just so complex, no matter what the race, the culture. I want to like speak for myself and say, I'm a Black female who's 37, who has an eating disorder, who is also an actor, who is in a relationship, who doesn't have any children. It's complex.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's complex.
And that could change from morning to
And
after
that
lunch.
can change all throughout the day.
There's something appealing about the hunger for curiosity. Do you know what I mean? Like there's something, and I think that's why storytelling is so great.
It's the nature.
Yeah.
It's simply the nature.
Yeah. So if we get curious about each other and don't like stick in our bubble, I think that actually can save the world. I think that because that is where you get to the unifying things. That's how you, if you dig deep and you realize, oh, someone who has been criticized their whole life for what they look like, all of a sudden I remember the places where I've been criticized and I go, oh, that we have common ground there. Like, so in a sense, we are all the same, but it's through the differences where you get there.
All right. So thoughts, comments on the video?
Again, please unmute and jump in. Yes.
Are you looking at the same?
Yes.
The diversity changing
Yes.
into complexity.
The complexity. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Although I think we'll have even more issues when we deal with folks who are not down with diversity because they'll struggle even more with complexity, but absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Any other reactions or thoughts before we wrap this thing up, folks? To the video or anything else I was said today? Okay.
Well, we did say that before coming into this conversation, how much there is to talk about in regards to this topic. And so hopefully today with this conversation, it gave you an opportunity to kind of reflect on the topic, the labels that either you have been, that you use for yourself or the ones that you use on others, but also looking at how everyone does it, right? Like everyone uses labels. So understanding why we're using them and really thinking about how we're using them, right? I liked in the video how she mentioned it's not about you not seeing color, for example. It's what you do with it and how you utilize labels that are stereotypical. That's the problem, right? And so thinking through that, there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue having these types of conversations. So I hope that today this gave you that opportunity to just reflect on this topic in particular.
And I do want to say, folks, that to Clara's point, and as we talked about through this session, we all do it, right? Like that's how our brains work. When things jump in front of us, we start applying all these labels just to try to make some sense of what is this data in front of me. And so it takes us to be conscious. It takes us to be aware. It takes us to be intentional, to be able to fight through all of sort of that default and then say to ourselves and our spirits and our brains and our hearts, no, I refuse. I need you to stop so that I can engage with this person, regardless of the label. Regardless of the label, can we engage with each other, regardless of what we think we see? Let's go find out. Don't be afraid to engage. And so with that, I want to thank all of you for this session, and we'll be back next week. And Claire, what are we doing next week? Because it's kind of special.
Yeah, it is. I'm really excited. So we are this week, just yesterday, started in with Latinx Excellence Month, aka Hispanic Heritage Month, aka Latinx Heritage Month. We're calling it Excellence Month because we believe that there are so many contributions and acknowledgments that are needed to be had in regards to the heritage and in regards to the culture. And so with that, we will be having inviting a graduate student from the Sustainability Office who will be sharing some points on sustainability in Latin American culture. So please join us for that wonderful conversation. We have some other exciting ones coming up for the rest of the semester. And we are just as much as you are excited to be back in this space. So thank you once again for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.